Hello, I'd like to talk to you about acquiring knowledge. You might call it learning. I call it learning as well, actually. But I'd like to talk to you about acquiring knowledge. So you might think, well, what we're really going to talk about is teaching. And of course teaching is very much associated with acquiring knowledge. We built a structure in our society where people go to school and they learn lots of things, and that equips them for the rest of their life, and the knowledge that they acquire serves them in good stead for the rest of their life. And that's the way it happens, and that's the way it's supposed to happen. But in actual fact, learning happens anyway, even if there were no teachers and there were no schools. People would still learn things. They would learn things by watching people who already could do things and copying them. They would learn things by coming up against problems and trying to solve them, and learning from the mistakes and learning why things didn't work and how to do things better next time. They would gradually gain experience, and their thinking would improve. Yes, there's a lot of learning that people would do in any case, even if there were no schools. But of course our society is such that there's a whole lot of knowledge that people sort of rely on in order to make their way in life, that providing this knowledge in the first place is considered to be a good strategy. The problem, I think, with this is that we've become too focused on teaching, and we inspect and regulate it, and we do all sorts of things to the teaching process. And of course we have teachers, we have qualified teachers who are good at teaching, but teaching and learning are so intertwined that, for instance, if I were to go into a classroom and teach quite a lot of students a particular topic for an hour, and I did a lot of work on it, and I prepared my subject very well, and I went into the class and I spent an hour, and I think I did a really good job of teaching those students this particular topic. But what would happen if none of them learned anything? Despite my best efforts, nobody learned anything. Did I teach anything? Well, clearly not. I might have been a teacher, but I didn't teach anything, so how could I be a teacher if I'm not actually contributing to people learning things? If nobody's learning anything, then there are no teachers. So the name teacher only works if there are people who learn things. And so if you're a learner, your role in the teaching process is a very, very important one. You've got to actually acquire some knowledge at the end of lessons, at the end of subjects, in order for the teacher's role to be effective. And if you don't acquire any knowledge, then the teacher's role wasn't effective. The learning is really about you. It's not about the teacher. It's not about anybody else. And we all learn at our own pace, regardless of anything, regardless of the curriculum saying that today we're going to do this and tomorrow we're going to do something else. That actually, unfortunately, doesn't work for you, because you will learn at your own pace, and if you're having a good day, you might be able to learn a lot more than the things you've taught and the things you've been taught on that day. And if you're having a bad day, you might not be able to learn anything. So the teaching process depends on you, because if you don't learn anything, you've then not been taught anything. So there is this thing about learning, I think, that it's a lot more effective if you need to know something. If you've got a problem and you need to solve it, or you've got a hobby maybe, you like doing microprocessor engineering, and you like controlling things with little control boards or whatever it might be, then you'll be learning things every time you do that. It might be that you like space and you like looking up in the stars, and maybe you want to buy a telescope and you might want to do that better. And every time you do anything associated with that thing that interests you, you're learning something, because you're learning something in order to achieve something. And you're trying to achieve something for you, because you want to do it. So what you learn depends on you, and it doesn't really depend on the teacher at all. Admittedly, teachers present things to you in a logical and ordered fashion so that you have the best chance at learning them, but if you're not interested in them, you don't tend to learn them very well. So being interested in things is down to you. It's not down to anyone else. You really do need to try and create a demand for knowledge in your life. And there is a real demand for knowledge. And the problem with knowing things and knowledge is that when you don't have very much, there are two things. One, you can't see what you don't know, so you think you perhaps know everything there is to know, because you don't know what you don't know. And secondly, the thirst for knowledge just doesn't come unless you already have experienced the acquisition of knowledge and the difference that can make to your life. The problem again, though, with all that is that you tend to, and we tend to as a society, make your progress in learning dependent on everyone else's. So if you might be doing something in a class and you might then find that you're the 10th best learner in the class. Well, that's ridiculous. You're the best learner that there is for you. All you have to do is be interested and to pursue your learning and to try and reach a goal. The goal is that, unfortunately, that you just carry on learning for the rest of your life, and the more you find out, the more you realise that there's so much more to find out than you could have ever imagined, and there's even lots of things that nobody in the whole world knows, and that's what science is all about. But just because you can search for an answer on the internet doesn't mean that you've learned anything. Searching for answers is one thing, but an answer has got to mean something to you. You know, when this sort of thing about children continually asking why in an irritating way, and adults get annoyed with it, and then the children say why, and so on. But why is a really, really great question. But with the question comes the responsibility of understanding the answer. So it's no point saying why if you then don't listen to the answer. So there are two people with responsibility there with that question, why. You ask why, your responsibility is to listen to and understand the answer. The person you've asked it to, of course, maybe an adult, has the responsibility to give you the best possible answer to that really brilliant question, why. Incidentally, how is a good question too. Particularly if you're learning something in order to achieve something, why is very, very important for you to understand what's going on. How is really important too. I like to sort of think, I was never really a brilliant mathematician. I sort of did all right at school, and but it was all mechanistic, and I learned the things that were put in front of me, and then we did a lot of examples so that it stuck in our heads, and it did, I guess, to some extent. But there's so many more things. Like take pi, for instance. If you ask a lot of children what pi is, they might say it's 3.142. The smarter ones, of course, will say it's something to eat. But if you ask children what pi is, they might say 3.142. And it isn't. It isn't that at all. And you might be thinking, well, it's not exactly that, it's something. No, but it isn't that. Pi is the ratio between the diameter and the circumference of a circle. you can find out what that equates to by doing an experiment. I mean, you could get a wheel and you could put a chalk mark on the bottom of the wheel and a chalk mark on the ground, and then you could wheel the wheel all the way around and put another chalk mark on the ground when the chalk mark on the wheel got to the bottom again, and then measure how far that was, and then you'd have the circumference of the wheel, and you could get a ruler and measure the diameter, and you could work out pi for yourself. You might not find it's exactly accurate, but if you did it 10 times, you might find out that you got closer and closer and closer to the value of pi that is given to you. But unfortunately, pi is not 3.142 or whatever, however many decimal, it goes on forever, I guess. But it's not that, it's the ratio between the circumference and the diameter of a circle, or a whole load of other concepts in maths and in other subjects that are just like that. People talk about them as though they're some abstract thing like a number, but they aren't. They're meaningful things, and they've usually been developed and invented or discovered in order to solve a problem that somebody had. So it would be good if we all knew what that problem was, and we all knew why somebody had discovered that concept and how it related to the things that we might come across in our lives. So really, when you are at school and you come across something like that, even if you're not told what pi is, if you come across a new thing like that, why not go and find out what it is? These days, you see, you've not really got much of an excuse for not trying to find out things yourself, because you're able to go home and search for things and find really good answers, and hopefully when you find answers, those answers will mean something to you, because you'll have a question. Finding answers when you haven't got a question, finding answers when you haven't really got a problem, finding answers when you haven't really thought about things for any length of time is not much use to you. Learning has got to be integrated with your life. So do have a go at learning. If you're not very clever, if you think you're not very clever, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that you get better yourself. You learn something. I mean, even if you're not very clever, you can actually say at the end of the day, well, today I know something more than I did yesterday. If you want to do it like that, you could certainly do that. But another way that you could do things is to have an interest, have a pursuit, and learn things associated with that. Also, try and pay attention when you're being taught things formally, and try and listen to what's being said, and don't be frightened of asking why or even how. But if you are clever, and there are one or two people who are, I believe, why not take advantage of that and see how far along the learning path you can get, see how much you can acquire, set a direction for yourself, but don't set it too early. Explore all the different things that you could possibly know, and see which one of them you'd like to pursue to a greater extent. See, learning is really, it really opens up opportunities for you. Unfortunately, again, we tend to, in our society, associate learning with getting a job and earning money and buying a house. But learning is so much more than that. It's about enriching your life. It's about finding out all about the world that we live in, and about the people that you meet, and about the plants that grow, and about the ground that you stand on, and about the cosmos, everything. Learning is all about those things, about discovering more, and however much of that you can discover is down to you. It's not down to me or the teacher or anybody else. You're responsible for it, and you can get as far as you can get. Just because you can't get as far as somebody else doesn't mean you shouldn't get as far as you can get. And anyway, your learning path will be probably different from everybody else's, because it will be yours. It will depend on the things that you want to do. So do have a learning path, do follow it, Don't be put off if people are better than you or cleverer than you, because they're not actually following your path anyway. Your learning goal is your learning goal. Don't be put off by others. If you are clever, you'll always find somebody who's perhaps a bit cleverer, but that shouldn't put you off either. In fact, it might even encourage you to go on. But don't let learning become a competition with other people. It isn't. Unfortunately, exams tend to make it so. But exams are just for the rest of society to be able to do things easier, like separate people into whether they should give them an interview for a job or not because they happen to have a qualification. Yeah, so exams might be important to you, but that's not really the reason for you to do learning. If you're doing learning in order to pass an exam, I feel a bit sad about that. You should be doing learning because you're really enthusiastic to find out things. Maybe you've got an interest, maybe you've got a pursuit that you want to follow. But that's the reason to learn, because you want to grow. You are learning because you want to grow, not to get a job, not to pass an exam. Alright, if you do learn, you will be able to pass exams, providing the people who set them and mark them are sensible enough to see that you do know the answers, even though you might not have put the actual one that they're expecting. Unfortunately, that implies that everybody who marks exams understands what the question is and understands what the answer is. But that's a different issue. The truth is that if you learn something, the passing the exams will come anyway. You won't have to work at that. If the reason that you're learning is to pass an exam, you're doing it for the wrong reason. If the reason for learning is because you want to grow and find out as much as you can, because you're interested in things and you want to become interested in more things, then you're doing it for the right reason. So have a go at learning, get on with it. You've got a whole life of learning in front of you. Make sure you do the best that you can possibly do. Hope it works out for you.